Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Steve here from socialtransformation.us. So, as you guys know, if you have social anxiety, it's very difficult to meet new people and approach new people and just go up to people and say hi to them. So, I have a theory that, people who have social anxiety are also more likely to fantasize about relationships in their head because we're all human. We all want to have that human connection, but if you're too afraid to meet someone or go up to someone and say hi to them, then you're going to start romanticizing in your head what it would be like to have a relationship with this person. I know many times when I was in high school, I would have a crush on someone in my class, and I would just be deathly afraid of actually starting a conversation with them. And I would start fantasizing about what it would be like to have a relationship with them, and what we would talk about, and what is this person really like. And I would just build up this whole character in my head about who this person was. But I was always too afraid to actually go up to them and find out who they really are. So it's just interesting being in that headspace where you have a crush on someone or you find someone attractive, but you're too afraid to actually meet them and talk to them and find out who they really are. But maybe you see them, every day or, a few times a week, and you start sort of just romanticizing who they are inside your head. And oftentimes, when we romanticize people inside our heads and when we fantasize about who they really are, we start thinking of them as way bigger than they really are. We start picturing them as some perfect human being, and we can just fall into these traps of living inside our head and having this magical perception of who someone is. And I remember just having those relationships, quote unquote, when I was in high school, just sort of falling in love with people from a distance and falling in love with people who I've never even said hi to, because I'm just I'm so in love with my idea of that person and who I think that person is, but yet I never actually approach them. And I would just keep pushing it back. I'm like, I'll approach them eventually. I'll go up to them. I'll say hi. I'll, been taking this class with someone for 5 months or whatever, so I'll approach them eventually. I have 1 more month left in school, so I still have plenty of time to approach them. But of course, the school year would end, and at that point it's like way too late to even talk to someone, right? Because you've already had this class with someone for such a long time, or you've already been working with this person for such a long time that it would almost be weird to start a conversation with them now, because it's almost like it's too late. And all this, as time passes, when we have a crush on someone, it becomes more and more difficult to actually approach them and say hi to them. And even when we do that, we have to be aware that the actual person is going to be different than the idea of that person that we've built in our head. Because when I have these types of crushes, you start thinking about the person when you're at home. You might start having dreams about them and who this type of person is, and you end up falling in love with that dream version and not the real version. And you just grow further and further apart between your actual perception of the person and who that person is. So that's why I wrote a recent article saying that you should express romantic interest in someone as soon as possible. Because the more time you let pass, the more distance is going to grow between you. And the more you're going to start building up in your head who that person is rather than actually getting to know them. And it just becomes more and more difficult to finally work up that courage to say hi to them. So the longer you wait to say hi to someone, the more difficult it becomes, because that time gives your mind a chance to start thinking of all these scenarios, and you just get further and further away from it actually happening. You know, people say that you don't really fall in love with a person on like a date or when you're actually with them, but you fall in love with them when you go home that night and you're thinking about them, right? Because love is sort of your perception of a person. So we all, romanticize and our relationships to a degree, right? Like if you're married, you have a certain perception of your wife that maybe isn't really the objective perception of your wife, but you have this perception of her and how awesome she is and all those experiences you had together, and that shapes how you see that person, obviously. So we all romanticize people to some degree, but when you have social anxiety and it becomes that much more difficult to actually initiate relationships and to connect with people, then you're way more susceptible to that fantasy type thinking and that romanticizing of people and who they really are. So that's just something I've been thinking about lately, because I remember those times in high school when I had a crush and I just fell in love with someone who really didn't exist. And I think that can happen actually in all sorts of ways, because especially if you're a lonely person, you can start falling in love with, TV characters or characters in books and movies and fictional people, because you crave that human connection. Your body, your mind, you crave that human connection, those relationships, because you're a social being. But if you're not getting them, then your mind sort of has to start creating them just to be able to get that fix, just to be able to feel like there's some sort of relationship going on. So I don't really have any advice specifically for this. I just think it's something to be aware of, the ways we romanticize people, and to be aware of the ways we create fantasies about people, oftentimes before we even meet them. And that's something to be aware of, that's something to be careful about. And really the only way to overcome that is to initiate that real world interaction as soon as possible. Don't even let the distance be created. Don't let the distance be created. Just, you have to approach that person as soon as possible and express yourself to them and connect with them and get their name and find out what their actual favorite color is and what their favorite band is, before you start creating a version of them in your head. Because oftentimes the longer you take, the harder it becomes, the more distance you become, and the more time you take, the more your mind starts distancing yourself from that possible real-world connection. So just some thoughts there. I'm curious to hear your guys' responses to this, if you guys can relate to this in any way, or other times you've fallen in love with someone from a distance, whether it's been a crush or a fictional character or a celebrity that you've never met before, but you start imagining what it would be like to live with this celebrity or be married to them, and how lovely they are, even though you've never met them. So anyway, just my thoughts. I hope you guys are enjoying your week, and I will talk to you all again soon. Later.